Hi, this is Alex. Apart from doing the tarot card of the month, I wanted to do some little short videos on some of my psychic experiences. And I'd have to go right back to the very beginning as a child. Now, both my parents had psychic abilities. They didn't actually use them until retirement, and that was mostly healing with my father being the main healer. And my mother was always clairsentient, clairambient, so that was kind of normal around the house. But both my grandmothers were also psychic. They just would know things, but no one in the family's actually ever set out to be a clairvoyant or whatnot professionally. So I'm the first, and I won't be the last. I've got a granddaughter that will eventually take over from me one day. Good on her. I hope she knows what she's going to be up for. It's not an easy life. It's interesting. It can be very trying, and there's times when you just think, why do I do this? It's a blessing and a curse at the same time. But anyhow, just going to show you a couple of steps along the way of my experiences starting in childhood. And a lot of psychic people have very good memories of the houses that they've lived in, going back to the age of 2 or 3. And you'll find that quite easily on the internet if you do a Google search. With me, well, when my parents were married, they moved into a flat. They bought this flat, and along came my brother, and then 2 years later I was born. That house, we lived there until I was about, let's see, 2.5 going on 3. So I've only got memories of the lounge room, part of the kitchen, because it was all one open plan area sort of thing, and I think there might have been a bedroom and whatever, I don't know. It's a house or a block of flats that was built 18 something, and when my parents moved out, that was it, getting demolished to make way for new tower blocks. So when I moved out of that place, I distinctly remember moving into the new house. That would have been about 1965 roughly. Couldn't tell you what time of year it was. It's always raining over in Scotland anyway, so I can remember moving into that house. I can remember the stairs of the block of flats as my very earliest memories, and as I said, the lounge room area and a bit going into the kitchen. I can also remember just suddenly remembering in my high chair looking out the window of this block of flats, my mum hanging out the washing downstairs in the big green that these flats had out the back. I was a right little active kid, and here was me standing up inside the high chair, and I'd unhooked the bit for the baby's reins, and I put the window and my hands up against the window. Mum happened to look up for some reason and nearly had a heart attack seeing me up at the glass, thinking, oh my god, she could fall through it. And yeah, racing up the stairs to grab me. No playpen or anything like that, I don't suppose. There was one, I know, but that's digressing. But in the incident there, yeah, gave it the fright of her life. Then we moved out that house and into the other house, and I can remember the exact layout of that house, the wallpaper in every room, what the carpet looked like, the furniture, you name it. And that's quite common for a psychic person to be able to go into such detail. But this wasn't just that experience. When I was lying in bed, and it was either just before I was coming out of a cot and getting put into the bed, it was around that time that I woke up one morning, and there was a lady and 2 men, and they were standing there looking at me. The lady was smiling, and the 2 men, they were standing either side of her, and they were wearing black suits like your proverbial men in black. They didn't say anything, but it was as if they were bodyguards flanking her for whatever reason. And I just thought that was my gran, like my dad's mother. But the woman I saw was in spirit. She died when my gran was 18. she had a heart condition. So, yeah, I never knew her. But I remember going to my grand's house, and there was always a picture of this lady inside a mirror, was like inserted, and that was quite fashionable back in the day. Having a loved one's photo sitting inside a mirror, it looks quite nice. And I used to ask her, "Who's that?" And she said, "Oh, that's my mum, that's your great-gran." And of course my mind suddenly goes, "Ooh, so it wasn't you I saw then." But I never told anyone until, oh gosh, I was an adult before I actually mentioned anything. And I think it was my dad that I mentioned this to. And he was quite surprised. No one ever spoke about seeing things like that all the time I was growing up. Not until I got to my late teens, and then one day that my mum's mother and her and myself, I think there was someone else visiting that day, they started talking about all this stuff. I just kept quiet and just listened. Things that my gran had seen in the house that she lived in up until she died. And she moved into the house just before World War II broke out. She'd been living in America and had some of her family there. Then they all came back to Scotland, and the rest of them lived in that house, grew up, got married, etc. But yes, in that house I was seeing my grandfather, who died when I was 7. And I used to think it was just my imagination. I didn't actually realise that I was actually seeing him in spirit until I was in my early 20s, when the penny finally dropped. I'm a slow learner, as they say. And yeah, little experiences like that throughout my life. And a really interesting time was when I was around 14 or 15, and I lived on the east coast of Scotland at that stage for about 3 years. And I had a few little dreams. They're not premonitions, they're called, I guess you would say, prophecy. One of them was my grandmother on my mum's side, her dog injuring his foot. And I noticed him limping in, and he leaped up onto this chair that she has at her window for him to look out. And in the dream, I noticed the dog with a sore paw, and I said to my gran, "Oh, he's got a sore paw." And she said, "Oh, maybe he hurt it in a fight." Roll on a few days later, it's the weekend, and everything fell into place exactly as it did in the dream. And I actually said to my mum and dad and my gran at the time, "Wow, I just dreamed about that during the week." And I was waking up, getting ready for school. They just looked at me as if I was showing a dog a card trick or something, you know. Nothing was said. It was just left at that. And then after that, there was a lot of trouble with the IRA, with parcel bombs and things. And this other morning I woke up and I could see myself standing at the kitchen window, and the postman walking up the path, and he took something out of his satchel, and it was a little square package wrapped with brown paper, as they did back in the 70s. And in the dream, as he's putting it through the mailbox, I'm thinking, "Oh, that's a letter bomb." And I dived to his hand coming through the mailbox, and I caught the package, and I looked at it, and I sat it up on the little cupboard next to the front door. An hour later, I woke up, I'm making myself breakfast, getting ready for school, look out the window, and there's the postman. Hand comes out the satchel, same little brown box. And of course this time I run to the back at the front door, sorry. Letterboxes attached to them in British houses, and I literally snatched it out of his hand as he put it through the mailbox. And I looked at it, I sat it down on the wooden cabinet, and I thought, "Oh my god, I just had a dream about that." And yeah, when my brother woke up and came downstairs, I told him what had happened. It turned out it was actually a little multimeter thing he'd sent away to get repaired down in England, and that was it, getting repaired and returned to us. But how freaky, everything was step by step. And then we moved back here to Australia, and this is when the Iran-Iraq war was going on, 1979, and I'm waking up for school one morning, and in face when you're just waking up and you can remember bits of dreams. I could see myself looking at a newspaper, and there's this very small picture and an article, and I recognised the Shah of Iran, and something in the dream telling me he's dead. And I came through and asked my mum, "Oh, is the Shah of Iran dead?" And she says, "I don't know." That night, Dad brought in the newspaper. Sure enough, there it was in the newspaper. And those things happened off and on for a while. And then it went quiet, nothing happened, apart from when you've got that feeling of, you know, you're at school, you maybe be in trouble for something, and I would just have this deep knowing that I was going to get in trouble for something. Sure enough, it would happen. So, and that's your intuition for you, you know, you just know that it's about to happen. So after that, everything just went very quiet until I was about, I think 29 or 30, because I had both my children. And yeah, I was living in a house. It was actually a number 5 house, which means the door number adds up to number 5. This was up in Sydney. This house was haunted. The lady had died there, and I had a few paranormal experiences in that house. And of course, when I went in to look at this house with my husband and the real estate agent, and he said, "Oh, it's a deceased estate, but don't worry, she didn't die here." And I'm thinking, liar, liar, pants on fire, she's standing right next to me. And I just mentally told the lady, "It's all right, I will buy the house. I don't intend staying." She was still earthbound. She had no idea how to cross over at that stage. And yeah, it was no end of trouble having a discarnate being in the house, as well as the door number. But I started having a lot of psychic things happening in that house, and people didn't like coming into that house because they could feel someone watching them. Even though they'd look around and there's no one there, they could sense it or see something at their peripheral vision. And it wasn't until I was moving out that house that the neighbour said to me, "Oh, you know, every time I come in there, I get this horrible feeling." And she said that the old lady died there, and I said, "Yeah, no, I can see her." And I couldn't get out of that house quick enough. It was nothing but misery. And then we moved down to Canberra, and again, I buy a house that adds up to number 5, and that's the house I'm in now. So it's almost 30 years I've been in this house, and yeah, it's not been easy. I don't think a number 5 house is lucky for me personally, but it's also been part of my psychic awakenings. I mean, those things lie dormant in you till you decide to use them, and I put it off for 20 years because I was scared of little ghosties and things. And oh gosh, we were about 28 or 29 in Sydney just before I moved here, and I had my cards read, and the lady said to me, "Don't be afraid of what you might see." And I thought, what does she mean by that? Duh. Ghosties. And it was a little while after that I realised, oh yeah, I've been seeing my grandfather in spirit. And then anytime I was in my parents' house alone as a teenager, they'd gone shopping, I'd always get this feeling of there was someone there, you know, like otherworldly. And I used to scare the bejesus out of me. So I had no interest in getting into this stuff. And it wasn't until I moved to Canberra and a lot of psychic things were happening, seeing things, hearing things, also smelling things. And one of the things when a psychic person's starting to get ready to use their abilities is smelling things like a strong smell of perfume or roses. And I had this on and off for a couple of days, and I'm just thinking, what the heck is this? And I mentioned it to someone who thought I was crazy. And then everything just started happening, and I thought, all right, I'm in, I'll do this. And I haven't looked back. It's basically the day I decided to do this, it just went boom. I learned how to read the cards. I took to it very, very quickly. And I don't read them the same way as other people. They've got 4 meanings to each card, and then there's 4 sub-meanings. And then a clairvoyant person will see and hear things over the top of that. So I'm basically looking at that. So sometimes I look at the cards and I just sort of vague out, and I'll just keep talking to the person that I'm reading for. I don't need to look at the cards. Now, I used to put the cards down and do a few layouts. Nowadays it's usually just one, 5 cards across, 5 down, and that's just taking my mind out of gear so I can start going into things. But occasionally I'll get drawn to a card and I'll look down at it and I see things that other people don't see in the card, and it will trigger something like a little psychic movie in my mind, so I relay that to the client. And when I've been doing these things for clients, there's been famous people come through in spirit that have been connected to that individual in some way. There's been 2 famous singers and an astrologer. That was Jonathan Kainer. That would be about 2018, 2019, I think. That he'd only been dead maybe a few days to a week, and I had a lady came here and she actually knew him. And next thing he's standing there, Tappy's Larry, you know, and I said, oh, he's just right here. Passed on a message and left. Now, normally a spirit will come to someone to pass on a message. They don't tend to stick around after that. It happens occasionally if it's a relative or a very close friend, but generally they pass on the message and then they go. They've got their lives to live in the non-physical world. So yeah, I met quite a few famous people, including Sir Mark Oliphant, the scientist. And that was very interesting because that was early on, I would say around about 2005 or 2006, when I decided to go to the spiritual church to learn how to tune myself in, psychic protection and things like that. You're born a psychic or a clairvoyant, which is a step up from just being psychic, and I'm also a spiritual healer. So to learn how to use these abilities but also using protection, and while I was doing some of these little training courses, they're not very long, I'd be driving down the parkway going into town, and halfway through I would have Sir Mark Oliphant suddenly appear in my car in the passenger seat, and just as I passed the Zoo and Aquarium here in Canberra, he would just appear wearing a military uniform of World War II era, and he was in the military at that stage, and he would follow me all the way into town and then just disappear. But I'd get this mental image of him walking up Anzac Parade and into the War Memorial, going up the steps, and I'm pretty sure there was someone else by his side, but I wasn't actually getting to see what they looked like. But the feeling was he was going there to meet someone, and it had a weird sort of clandestine sort of vibe from it. But this happened every time, and I was going twice a week because I was doing some training on spiritual healing and other psychic development stuff, and that was basically just to help me use what I already had and understand what I'm doing, what I'm seeing, feeling, etc., and the dangers, pitfalls, all that stuff. So this guy was just coming along for the ride, didn't pay for the petrol either, didn't say boo to me, and that went on for about 3 or 4 weeks, maybe longer. Then it stopped, and then I was at the War Memorial, I think about 5 years ago, maybe not quite as long as that, middle of the day, gets out the car park at the back of the War Memorial and walks between the 2 buildings. There's the main building and there's the administration building, and in that walkway there's a big tank or armoured personnel carrier. It had gone over a landmine, so it's damaged underneath, and yeah, just as I'm walking by this bit, Mark Oliphant appears again, and I'm just going, what? Again, doesn't speak to me, he's just there. So he's got a very powerful connection to the War Memorial in some capacity. I don't know what it is, but yes, it's there. There's a lot of people that see and hear things in the War Memorial. We're talking spirits, and yes, I always tend to get attracted to the World War I spirits because that was my last lifetime. I remember how I died and where I was. I know the year. I know what I look like, and how I died. I'll go into that some other time though. But and my father grandfather, sorry, on my mum's side, also fought in World War One. He was in Passchendaele on the Somme, and I would feel intuitively that I think I was probably at the Somme as well, and that's when I died. So, and that was 1915. Funny thing is, my dad's father was born in 1915. I look like his side of the family, very strongly like one of his sisters. And it's only recently that my great-grandmother on my dad's side has actually came through in spirit. She died giving birth to my grandfather. And my grandfather and I also share the same Chinese year. We were both born in the year of the rabbit. Well, actually, I died in the year of the rabbit. I'm born in the year of the rabbit. Grandpa was born in the year of the rabbit. That's weird. Yeah. And the funny thing is, when he died, he actually had an accident. And when he was crossing over, I was learning to do ceramics at the time. And it was late at night, and I was washing up the paintbrushes in the bathroom sink, as you do. And I kept on feeling someone standing in the doorway. And then I would hear some Scottish words getting said, and it was in jest. And I just realised that's my grandpa. Next morning, I ring my parents to tell them, and my dad said, yes, Grandpa died last night. And I said, yeah, that explains why he was standing in my bathroom doorway. And I told him what he was saying. But also I was hearing, he used to play the bagpipes, and the instrument they use when they're not using the full set of bagpipes is called a chanter, and I could hear him playing little tunes on that. So that was quite interesting. And that leads to another little story. When I was at the Spiritualist Church, because I was used to my grandfather playing his chanter in a lounge room, they're quite loud, those things. Top of a hat, he'd just pick up and start playing away, as they do. And doing this psychic development thing, we were doing psychometry, which is a form of clairtangence, and holding an object in your hand and reading from that. And this particular incident, they had put the items in little envelopes, so we weren't opening the envelope, we were feeling the impression through the envelope. And I saw an ambulance, and I saw like a sporting oval, and people, it looked like there was some Scottish event taking place, and I could hear the funeral lament, the flowers of the forest. And the lady that belonged to the item in the envelope, she said, oh my God, that was a friend of mine, died of a heart attack a few weeks ago. And he was actually at this event playing the bagpipes, and he had a heart attack. So, spooky. So these are the basic things that I've had experience with. Other than that, it's like going places, historical places, and seeing these people in spirit going on with their life. One of my earliest experiences with that was playing in what we call the Covenanters Graveyard, which is in between Motherwell and Wishaw in Scotland. I think it comes under a place called Cambusnethan. I haven't been there for a long time, so I'll start to forget things. But yeah, we'd be playing in this graveyard, and my mum's family owned a big block of land there, and they had pigs and different things down there. So across from that, there's a little road, little dirt road, and then there was the graveyard, and then you're right onto the River Clyde. Well, sometimes playing there, I would see these people from the 1600s or 1700s, and it was a band of people, as they would call them back in the olden days, where the husband's going to work, the whole family pack up and go too, because the wife's got to do his cooking, washing and all that. And all these people, they looked like they'd been on the road for a long time. Their clothes looked a bit tatty, and they looked absolutely exhausted, and there were small children just walking along as well. And I thought, my God, that is so sad, you know. At first, because I was small, when I thought, I didn't realise what I was actually saying, but you start thinking about things over the years, and then it suddenly dawns on you, you're actually looking into a period of history there, and that's just playing in this continuous time loop. with people on the other side, especially if they're spiritually stuck in that timeline and they can't get out of it. It just keeps on replaying itself like a broken record. Another example of that would be, I went to a recycling place here in Canberra, and my husband picked up this medics pouch, and a lot of them were made out of just like grenade satchels and things. Now this one went back to the Vietnam era. The man was still attached to it, this army medic. He was American, not Australian. And I came tearing over to my husband and I said, the man's still attached to that. I've got him here in spirit. And we actually brought this pouch, brought it home, and I had to send this man off into the spirit realm properly, because he was just stuck in this limbo, thinking that, oh my God, the helicopters have come, picked up all the dead bodies and whatnot, and they've left him standing there, and he's shouting out, don't leave me here, guys. And he's waving his arms above his head frantically, and I'm telling him, you're on there, your body's on there, you're in spirit now. You died in the 1970s, you know, this is the 2000s now. I did tell him what date it was. I'm pretty sure it was the month of October, and having to send this guy on and having to explain things to him in spirit first before he could move on. But that was absolutely gut-wrenching, seeing this guy just suffering continuously, stuck in that same little glitch of time, never-ending suffering, and going out of his mind with fear and anxiety, and he didn't even know he was dead. So I did a clearance on this army medic's pouch, which was actually a grenade pouch, and as I said, a lot of medics use them for putting things in when they're in combat situations, because it's quick and easy to carry. So yeah, when he's watched that helicopter taken off, and it was under heavy fire, he was freaking out because he thought he was going to get killed. He didn't know he's already dead. So, and that's quite common. There's people that die suddenly that don't even know they're dead if they've been in an accident. I wouldn't wish it on anyone, because it's a horrible feeling for them, and then I'm feeling exactly what they're feeling, because they show me this is how I'm feeling, and it's a horrible, horrible feeling. You just do not wish it on anyone. Another example of that is a friend of mine's daughter, or stepdaughter rather, was killed in a car crash. Oh gosh, that was about 10-15 years ago now. And at first she didn't realise she was dead, but she knew about me through her stepmom, and she came through to me one night. It was around dinner time, and I kept on bursting into tears, and I couldn't work out why I was so distressed. And then I realised that this is someone that's passed on that I'm feeling, and my husband used to switch on the news, and it was actually on the news about the car accident this girl was killed in. But what she was upset about was her sister is so distressed, and she couldn't get her to calm down and let her know that she's alright. So her mum came round to see me, and we got it all fixed out, and the girl moved on. But again, that's a horrible, gut-wrenching feeling. You just cannot imagine what grief feels like when someone's been killed in a car accident. This girl lay at the roadside dying, a teenage girl, and there was other people that were very badly injured in this crash too. And yeah, the pain and suffering, when you feel that, you don't forget it, even though it's not someone that I'm connected with. When I'm feeling that grief, it's real and it's horrendous, and you want more than anything for it to stop and not feel that again. So keep that in mind. People, if you speed, drive dangerously, the grief that those dead people feel, that's real, and you would not wish it on anyone. You know, that's why I get very angry with people that speed and that have no respect on the road for other people. They have no idea what grief is like. It is a horrible, shocking thing. Some people have come through in spirit that have actually caused someone else's death, how badly they feel what they've done, and the ripple effect of it is like the proverbial throwing the stone into a pond. and it ripples out and ripples out. Grief is the very, very same, but the feelings, it's unimaginable, horrendous. So just be careful with what you do when you're on the road or doing anything where there's an element of risk. You know, you just do not want any other human being to feel that. But having said that, animals will also feel that grief. There's many dogs and cats that have literally died of a broken heart because the person that they love has died or have been abandoned. Those animals feel that very, very deeply, and they feel deeper than what humans actually realise. And I know because I've had 6 fur babies all at the one time, and watching them all die and watching the other ones deal with the grief and how they react to it. It affects them very deeply. And I actually saw when my first Jack Russell Sparky died, he had a heart murmur, and when we were taking him to the vet, all the cats all lined up, one after the other, to come up to him and touched him with their noses. They were giving their blessings to him and their love. And the other little dog, Gromit, he was there too. And I just knew 12 months' time I'm going through this again, and it happened. But the interesting thing with when Sparky died was seeing his soul leave his body. It doesn't look like the physical body. This was a black and purpley colour, and it was very sparkly. Almost like looking at a piece of amethyst in a way, but it was very sparkly, and it was like an eye shape. But the lights in the vet clinic all dimmed, and then there was like this flash of bright white light, and he was gone. But the soul bearers were there to move him on, because I'd called in spirit to help move Sparky on. And even the vet nurse, she was gobsmacked when she saw the lights flicker and the big flash of white light in the room, and off Sparky went. But he left us all little memories of him, because my sons, they stayed at home and they both said what they felt or saw as he died, and I certainly did. And I've done that with quite a few of my fur children as they've died. So I'm down to just Ruby, and she was born, oh gosh, I'm trying to think, she would be born about 2013, 2014. So I still had the 4 cats, and I think Tolstoy, my big Norwegian forest cat, he was the second oldest cat, but he had bone cancer and had a leg amputated, and I knew that they hadn't got all the cancer out, but he was the first to go. And again, when things were happening, it was little psychic things happening there. He also said thank you to me for taking him to the emergency vet to have him put to sleep, because he was so ill. And that was Ruby's first experience with losing one of her furry siblings. And my little Russian blue cat, Daisy, she was like Tolstoy's little wife, and she was absolutely inconsolable when he died, and wandering around the house lost because she was missing her little husband. They were very close from she was a tiny kitten. And yeah, cat animals do feel that pain and that grief. So yeah, you got to be careful how you show affection to dogs and cats, or any other animal for that matter. Just remember, they're very sensitive too, and they see into the non-physical world. They sense things all the time, because whenever I'm working with spirit and I've got any of my fur children around, they see what I see, and they respond, react. If the person in spirit's moving around the room, I'm watching the dog or the cat's eyes, following the way they're walking and what direction they're going in. So it's quite interesting. But never underestimate what happens with spirit. There are many skeptics around, and I can guarantee you, if anyone comes to me for a reading, they're not skeptical when they leave. They have a very peaceful vibe as they leave, and it's one of those things when I don't like to use the word religious experiences. This is a spiritual experience, not religious. They're 2 different things. but people have been skeptical and they walk out the door, they're no longer a skeptic. They leave happy and very uplifted because they've just come through a spiritual experience. And yeah, it's a very fascinating and it's still confusing sort of situation, if you know what I mean, because generally we don't see what's around us in the non-physical world, even though our thoughts, our consciousness, it moves in and out of dimensions constantly, because we are multidimensional beings, because first and foremost we are spirit, but we're living in a physical vessel. So we move between worlds with our thoughts, and even your energy field or your aura, the colours in that, they change constantly too, from thought to thought, every, I don't know, every so many minutes or whatever. I've never examined that, and that requires actual technology to go in and check all that. But just knowing that your thoughts, emotions, everything, your aura changes colour constantly. Traffic lights. So yeah, it's an interesting experience being a clairvoyant and a medium and a spiritual healer, because of the things that I see. I must point out I don't actually do spiritual healing anymore because I have fibromyalgia and I have really bad arthritis, so I can't hold my arms and my hands up for too long, or I get a very bad tremor and then I'm exhausted and I'm no use for at least a week after that, so I had to stop doing it. And I don't touch the physical body. My hands work about this above your body, and people will feel the heat and the tingling energy that comes through. That's when you know the person's the real deal and not some charlatan. The energy can feel warm or it can feel cold, but it will have a buzzing, tingling feeling around your body. So, as I say, that's another one of the psychic abilities that I have. But there are 7 psychic senses as opposed to 5 physical. You will see them on my blog. Down on the right hand side there's an article there, and I'll put the link up to my blog on this video when it's finished. And I've got a big ring binder folder right in front of me here, and there's a list of things I want to put on to videos so people can listen rather than read, because some people don't like reading, they prefer to listen to something or watch a video. So I've got a little list drawn up of some of the things that we'll discuss, but there's other things that are very private, things that has happened between a client and me, and it doesn't leave this room. So I've just made a list of several things I can discuss in videos, but there's other things that, yeah, they have to stay quiet out of respect for the client. And this isn't about me, it's about humanity and spirit. So I'm only just like a switchboard operator when I'm doing mediumship or doing readings. It's not about me. Never. That's just not on, because that's where the ego comes in, and I don't really like that. So I'm trying to keep it as down to earth, humble as possible, and just whatever comes out, because it's meant to. So I'm going to wrap this video up, and I'll do another one shortly. I don't want to make like hour-long videos, because I think people will get a little bit fed up with that if someone's just prattling on for an hour straight. So I'm going to wrap this up. I was hoping to have it at the half-hour mark, but here we're at 39 minutes in, and I'm going to wrap it up, but I'll do another one very shortly. I'm trying to put a few up there so that people can just go and listen to quite a few in a row if they're interested, and then I'll leave it for a bit, and then I'll put some more on the internet. So, but yes, one of the most important things is always listen to your heart. When it comes to anything of a psychic or spiritual nature, the heart is where you go. You don't go external, it's go within into your heart chakra. So to me that's the most important chakra in the body, because it's the purest thing to pure spirit, while we're stuck in the physical realm. well, I will leave you now, and I'm going to go and prepare for another little video. And